All right, Unit 2 is about matrices, and for this first lesson, we're going to do an introduction to matrices by looking at the small problem. It says that in November, 2 local malls received the following shipment of shirts, and here we're given this information. So it tells us how many small are at each mall, how many medium shirts are at each mall, and then how many large shirts are at each mall. So as you can see here, the information written out in sentences like this can sometimes look confusing, and it's helpful to organize it in what we call a matrix. So a matrix kind of looks like a table. We organize the numbers by rows and columns. So as you can see here, for this November shipment of t-shirts, we have that in the first row, mall 1, and second row is mall 2, and then in the columns we have the sizes for small, medium, and large. So with a matrix, if it does have context to something in real life like this, you would label the rows and columns. And a lot of what we'll be doing when we do operations like adding and multiplying and subtracting and all that, we don't need labels if we're just dealing with numbers. One thing that you do need to know about matrices are the dimensions of a matrix. By the way, matrix is singular if you're just talking about one, but if you have more than one, then you say matrices, so that's the plural form. So the dimensions are the number of rows by the number of columns. So in this example, we have a 2 by 3. I'm going to highlight the rows, 2 rows, so those are going across. And next, with a different color, I will highlight the columns. And so that's where the 3 comes from, since we have 3 columns. And I'll highlight the 2 in yellow since those were the rows. So this means that to fill in the blanks, we have 2 rows and 3 columns. All right, a number of rows always comes first, and then number of columns is always second. And then each individual element in the matrix represents the number of shirts of a given size that were shipped to a specific mall during November. All right, we will come back to the mall problem in example 2, but let's go ahead and look at example 1 first. Here's just practice with identifying dimensions. So when I look at part A, I'm counting how many rows, and there's 3, and then how many columns, and there's just 1. So that matrix is a 3 by 1. In part B, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the rows. There's 3. And then for columns, we have 2. So this is a 3 by 2 matrix. The biggest mistake students make would be switching and calling this a 2 by 3 when it's actually a 3 by 2. So make sure you're looking at rows first and then columns. This one's easy because if you switch them, you luck out since it's 2 either way, so 2 by 2. And this one looks like we have 1, 2, 3 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So that would be a 3 by 4. In part C, where it's a 2 by 2, when the number of rows and columns are the same, we actually can call that a square matrix. All right, so in example 2 now, it says that the sale figures for shirts in mall 1 and 2 during the months of November and December are given by the matrix below. So that actually should say matrices since there's 2 of them now. So it's the same problem from above, but we're adding in all this December data as well. So part A says describe what the number 3 represents. So the first thing we want to do is locate where the number 3 is. And that's over here. I'm going to highlight it. And to describe what it means, there's 3 things we need in our answer. We need to know what is the size that goes with that number, which mall goes with that number, and which month goes with that number. Because we're given information here for November and December, mall 1 and mall 2, and then 3 different sizes. So when I want to describe what the number 3 means, I'm going to say that we're talking about sales this time, actually, the sales. So 3 large shirts are sold at mall 2 in December. So once again, make sure you have which month, which mall, and which size. And as long as you have all three of those components, then you would get full credit on a question like this. So for part B, we're doing the same thing. We just have the number 35. If you'd like to go ahead and hit pause on this video and try to look at what number 35 means on your own first, go ahead, and then you can go ahead and hit play to check your answer. All right, let's go ahead and see how you did. So for the number 35, we'd say there are 35, and the size here is medium. So 35 medium shirts. Which mall are we talking about? At Mall 1. And this time we're looking at the numbers for November. So your sentence doesn't have to be identical to this. You could say in November at Mall 1 there are 35 medium shirts sold. You know, you can rearrange things a little bit, but you need to include the size, you need to include which mall, and you need to include the month. All right, next question. A lot less writing this time. We just have to give the number of small shirts with Mall 1 and December. So here's December, Mall 1, small, and that number looks like it'd be 16. Let me switch colors for this last one. We want large, Mall 2, November this time. So November's over here, large is over here, Mall 2 would go with the number 14. And that concludes our first lesson for Unit 2, which was an introduction to matrices. So in the next lesson, we'll start doing some operations with matrices.